Diplomatic efforts are underway in Doha between the Sudanese government and the largest rebel movement in Darfur. As the ICC considers an arrest warrant for the Sudanese president, Egypt dispatches its top diplomats to Khartoum to persuade Omar al-Bashir to make concessions. So, is the crisis any closer to being resolved? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Imran Garda. 6 days of talks to end 6 years of fighting. The Sudanese government and the Darfur rebel group Justice and Equality Movement, also known as the JEM, are in Qatar to find a way to end the violence in Western Sudan. So how close are they to reaching a truce, and what are they fighting about? Well, the war in Darfur began in 2003 when rebel groups took up arms against the government, complaining of discrimination and neglect of their remote western region. The UN says the conflict has left 300,000 people dead and 2.7 million displaced. Several rebel groups are involved in the war, but only JEM is present at the talks. Some of their key demands are: the government should stop violations against the camps of the displaced people. It should also stop indiscriminate bombing against civilians and agree to exchange prisoners of war. Accepting these demands is the first step towards actually starting the peace talks. It's almost a week now, and that hasn't happened. Well, joining us today are our guests in Doha, Abdurrahman Al Khalifa, member of the Sudanese government and advisor to the President's office. Also in Doha, HUSSEIN Adam, Justice and Equality Movement JEM spokesperson. And in Nairobi, the International Crisis Group's Horn of Africa Project Director, FOUAD HIKMAT. Abdurrahman Al Khalifa, if I could start off with you, are we getting anywhere in these talks?
Well, I think there is a kind of progress, but I just can't tell that, whether we are going to sign a conclusive kind of agreement tonight, tomorrow, that I cannot tell. However, we are still engaged. This in itself is a positive sign, and there is a progress.
What progress? Give us some evidence, give us some examples.
Well, at least we know what they are talking about. They know what we are talking about, and the mediators know what both sides are talking about. That in itself is a progress.
Hussein Adam, is that progress that both sides know what the other is talking about? Surely we'd expect it to be much further than that.
Yeah, I guess I would like just to put it in the context. Actually, we came here after 3 years of fighting, after the failed and unfair agreement of the DPA, which is signed by Minni Minnawi. To come here after 3 years of fighting to start the negotiations, that in itself I think is a very positive move. And I think that also I would like to commend the parties for that, both our party and the government side, as well as the Qataris and the Jibril Basuli, the joint mediator. I think, and we are here for peace. And actually, our leader, Dr. Khalil Ibrahim, also, he came here just for 48 hours, but is still here in Doha, hoping that we can make something here and we can achieve something, at least to sell it for our people and to sell it for those who are very concerned about what's going on and about the conflict in Darfur. Right now, I think in terms of the confidence building measure and declaration of intent, I think we made some progress actually, but there is some sticking points. I hope that the other side, I think the side of the government of Sudan, to understand that these issues are very important, and I think that to be ready actually to make some concessions now. Actually, the thing is between them and the mediation. From our side, actually we made the concessions which we were supposed to do, and we are ready actually to play our part, and we appeal to the government side that to reach something and to give up something.
Okay, Mr. Al Khalifa, did the JEM, in your eyes, make these concessions that Mr. Adam says they made?
Not in the least, not that we know of. We don't know of any concessions. Let the gentleman tell us what kind of concessions they gave. They have certain points in their minds, and they're very adamant about them. And we are still talking, and we are telling them this is a non-starter. You cannot push the other side or push the whole process, and you put your own agenda. It's a give and take.
We keep talking in these abstracts of, progress and concessions. Can you give us some examples, please? What do you feel the JEM can do better at in giving you concessions, sir?
Well, I think they didn't give any concessions. We did not ask them to give concessions.
Okay, so let's go to Mr. Adam. Mr. Adam, where have you made concessions? Give us an example.
I'll give you the example. The fact that we are here, you know, while they are killing our people on the ground, I think that in itself is concession. The fact that we are here and seizing, you know, fire and not making any kind of offensive, and at the same time they are, you know, committing offensive or launching offensive against our own position. That was just 2 days ago, and I think it itself, and for us to stay here, remain engaged, I think that in itself is concession. But let's be very clear about this, you know. Right now, the issue of you know, facilitating and improving the humanitarian situation on the ground and all this kind of thing, I think there is some progress on that. But there is a sticking issue which is concerning the release of detainees and release of prisoners of war, and that actually is there is a consensus around the Sudanese, Sudanese parties, and even their own initiative, the so-called All Sudan initiative, also provided a very clear and stated very clear that detainees, prisoners of war, convicted because of the conflict of Darfur, they have to be released. Actually, we are not just asking for one side kind of release or concession on this issue, because we ask also to exchange actually the detainees and prisoners of war, and we are ready to do that kind of exchange. They don't even want that to be stated on the document we are discussing right now. They don't want even that to be mentioned in the very document which we are discussing right now, which is the document of the confidence building measure and the declaration of intent. And I think the mediators, really, they are very surprised, and everybody is very surprised, since even their own initiative stated that very clear. The initiative which organized and sponsored by the government of Sudan and by the National Congress said very clear that detainees, convicted, political prisoners, because of the problem of Darfur, they have to be released.
Well, it sounds as if the two positions are very far away from each other at this moment in time. Let's bring in our guest who represents the International Crisis Group, FOUAD HIKMAT. A lot of your job is to put out fires. Is this fire raging, and is it unable to be put out?
Actually, there are, I see that there is 3 layers or 3 levels here. Very clearly that Qatar is a venue that is filling the gap that since the DPA was signed, or the Darfur Peace Agreement was signed in Abuja, there was no venue or there was no initiation of peace talks. So the first one is now Qatar, and I think this by itself is a good point. However, very clearly that it is between 2 parties, JEM claiming to be the representatives of Darfur, or at least that now they are the power to be reckoned in terms of military and politically. And with the government, however, we need to recognize that at the other layers, in terms of Darfur, humanitarian situation in Darfur, we have about over 2 million people are displaced, and they want to see a progress. They want to see that their plight is being dealt with and that this is over for them as quickly as possible. Plus, let's not forget that there is the majority of the people in Darfur who are not represented by the government. They are not represented by JEM. They are not represented even by the other rebel groups. And at this moment, there is animosities, there is problems between the tribes and so on. And I wonder that if there is a breakthrough at Qatar, will be able to address the real issues of the Darfuris on the ground.
Okay,
I think
besides that,
yeah.
Let's go to Mr. Khalifa and talk about those not represented. What about the SLM Abdul Wahid Noor faction? He's not at the talks. How can any agreement whatsoever not include him and his movement?
Well, if Abdul Wahid is not here, it does not mean that we should not talk peace. We talk peace with everybody who has a political will to talk peace. Abdul Wahid is not yet prepared to talk peace.
Well, this is what he said. He said the negotiations are taking place among the Islamists of Sudan and has nothing to do with the Darfur issue. How would you respond to what he said?
I wouldn't respond to this. I think I would brush it as a very silly statement. I mean, this is a very serious process. We are all engaged in peace talks. Whatever we are, at the end of the day, we are all Sudanese, and everybody comes from whatever he comes, and we are talking peace quite seriously.
Okay, Mr. Adam, another quote of Abdul Wahid Noor. He also said recently what is taking place in Doha is a well-studied plan to rescue al-Bashir from The Hague in exchange for releasing the brothers of Khalil Ibrahim from the prisons of Khartoum. You mentioned earlier the issue of prisoner exchange. Is this, as Abdul Wahid says, some conspiracy between your rebel group and the government to the exclusion of everybody else?
I'm very surprised. You know, a lot of people, they give a lot of weight for Abdul Wahid. I think Abdul Wahid is one man, you know, movement. You cannot say there is a movement called led by Abdul Wahid because there is no structure. Abdul Wahid is the spokesperson for the movement, is the chairman, the commander-in-chief, and all this kind of thing. Abdul Wahid now is a media, you know, commentator rather than, you know, he's making kind of action. Every initiative we make, you know, he's trying to make, you know, like, you know, this kind of a statement or something. This process is not about GEM or game leadership. This process about the people of Darfur. This process is about the people of Sudan. Look at our negotiating position. You can find the concern of the ITP's people. You can find the concern of the refugees people. You can find the concern about the women groups. You can find the concern about the children. Everybody, you know, is included here. We would like actually to realize actually and to achieve their aspiration and to achieve actually their needs. You know, for your guests, you know, from Nairobi, I would like to say very clear: we are Darfurians and we know Darfur very well. You know, all these people you are talking about now, right now, they are not really well-structured kind of movement. They are some individuals maybe in history in this conflict or something, they have some names, but right now they don't have any kind of movement. Actually, we started to talk to them, you know, to make decision about making peace, to make decision about start this kind of process, but they don't have any kind of structure even to take decision. We cannot wait for them. We cannot, you know, make this process hostage to anyone. We cannot make the cause of Darfur hostage to these people. We are here and we are starting this process and we are ready actually to give the priority for peace. There is no question about that. But in the later stage, actually, we would like also to include the civil society, to include actually the women group, to include even the tribal leaders. This is not going to be a process just between GEM and the government of Sudan.
Okay.
This is a process, is going to be the process of the people of Darfur and the process of the people of Sudan, because also we are going to address the issue of democratic transformation as well.
Mr. Adam, we have to take a break. It is time for a short break now. When we come back, we look closely at some of those external factors affecting the Darfur conflict. Do stay with us.